Sonic Boom Episode 23, Robot Battle Royale. We start out with Sonic complaining on Amy's couch that the beginning of Amy's movie was too slow from filler. That's hypocritical for this show. And then Tails bursts into the house and tells them that his antenna for TV picks up broadcasts from the past. That's dumb. The show is trying to lampshade how there's filler at the very start of the episode. Well, it didn't work that much because Tails burst into the house pretty quickly. So it was less fillery than usual. And if they know it's filler, they shouldn't... Well, it's not really that long of filler in this case, so it was worth it. But there's no reason they couldn't have started the episode with Tails bursting into the house. And Sonic's got no respect for him while Knuckles uses the antenna as a back scratcher. Then Knuckles tells him to look at a faraway light switch, and enthusiastically flicks it with a long stick, desperately trying to make himself useful by being an inventor. Why can't Sonic be the one trying to make himself useful by being an inventor? Knuckles should know by now that he's stupid and has a reputation of being stupid, and thus has no reason to even try. At least with Sonic, I could kind of buy that he would think he could do it, because he's supposed to be confident, so there's no way he wouldn't have at least tried. Tails doesn't think he'll be determined enough to learn how to be a good inventor, and Knuckles wants to invent a bunch of stuff that Tails already made. I can kind of understand, because people tend to say inventor to refer to engineer, like in the fiction. Tails is called an inventor, when really, he doesn't necessarily have to be inventing new things. So Knuckles is using invent as a synonym for engineering. And the only thing forced about it is that he just keeps doing it, despite the obvious confusion and being called out on it. Knuckles says more forced things, and then wants to spend time with him as a friend. Then Knuckles tells Tails that he wants to enter him in a robot battling contest. Tails says he has nothing to prove, and Knuckles taunts him, while for some reason Tails' own friends obnoxiously try to gouge Tails like they like Knuckles better. Tails tells Knuckles off and plans on entering the competition. One of the contestants is Dave, so at least he's learning. He's actually doing something with his villain aspiration. Tails says he made a bot that can take control of any opposing robots nearby. So one, that's obviously cheating, and would be caught as such, though I guess it could make sense that they would show favoritism to Tails. And two, if he can make that, why doesn't he win against all of Eggman's robots immediately by hypnotizing them not to do anything? Why didn't he make that a lot earlier? Eggman says that Dr. Eggman is his father, and joins the competition. So why doesn't he say this correction every time he's called Eggman, if it matters so much to him? I guess the mayor is only letting him join out of fear of what he'd do if he was rejected. Maybe he attacked someplace every single time he was rejected from it, and so they eventually all learned their lesson. Tails' stupid-looking robot makes Dave's robot spark and wins in one hit. That's boring. Also, that's not hypnosis, that's electrocution. We see a little robot send harmless orange balls at Eggman's robot and get vaporized, and people boo him. Then a cute poodle robot jumps onto a robot and makes something blow up. This is the Sonic X tournament all over again. Knuckles' wooden robot falls apart, and the poodle robot gets kicked away. I mean, it made a bad robot, but it was still kind of impressive that he was able to make any kind of wooden sculpture at all. He shows some kind of promise as a carpenter. It's just weird that he would try to make a wooden robot. The purple robot gets made to fall over in this ridiculously lazily written, rushed tournament that made Sonic X's tournament look fantastic by comparison. Because at least it involved people and not robots that don't have minds. Eggman got override codes because it's made by Eggman Industries, which somehow people actually use and trust. So he beats Tails' robot by taking control of his robot. And then he plans to take control of all of Tails' other robots, but even though he doesn't have any, as he points out, Eggman decides to go there anyways. Knuckles tells off Tails for programming override codes into his own robot. Tails doesn't explain that he programmed them just in case the robot turned against him. But that gives him an idea, because predictably, this is when Knuckles' robot will come in handy, because it doesn't have override codes. It's too stupid to be controlled. So the robot does work? That's pretty smart of Knuckles then. So after the heroes generically beat robots in one hit, Tails explains that he needs to use Knuckles' machine to get close enough to Hypnobot. Never mind that it should be able to hear him coming. Eggman sees it and assumes it's joining his army. Knuckles has to push her to keep her from attacking it, and Eggman sweetly reminisces about his first robot, saying that it was Zippy. Then Tails climbs out of the machine and easily reprograms the robot to his side, which gets the robots to waste time dancing and playing music. Sonic congratulates Tails, who congratulates Knuckles and humors him. Knuckles, out of nowhere, gives up inventing, just to say that his new hobby might be inventing as well. Sonic says that Eggman's robots might never be a problem again because of his Hypnobot, just for the Poodle robot who somehow didn't break the minute it landed from being launched into the sky earlier and falling on the ground, to make it explode way too easily to be believable. Okay, that doesn't explain why Tails doesn't make a Hypnobot again after the last one was destroyed. It's still such a storybreaker power that he shouldn't have been able to make it. This episode was about Knuckles wanting to help Tails in the lab, but instead of being refreshing for long, and showing off how normal people would imagine Knuckles to act there, it immediately devolves into being unbelievably annoying because he thinks he can invent stuff that's already invented, until he gouges Tails into joining a robot fighting competition. But because the show's focus sucks, an episode with the word battle in its title has no focus on battles. So every single fight ends in one anticlimactic hit in a franchise where the bosses all take 8 hits to kill. This could have been a great episode. Instead, it's mostly annoying until the climax, where Tails needs to sneak over to the taking control of Hypnobot to reprogram it. How does he know how to do that from the outside without it being attached to a computer that could display its code, and a keyboard for him to change the code to what he wants? That's always patronizing. And of course, the mere concept of Hypnobot is a storybreaker robot, and the writer's solution didn't work. He would have just built another one. The only way it makes sense that he didn't is if this episode was all just a dream, or an alternate universe. But that's not true. Like, Knuckles should have easily just explained that when he said inventing, he meant making stuff. Episode 23-2, No Robots Allowed. We start out with Tails and the others exhausted from a heat wave in their house, because I guess this is before the air conditioning in people's homes has turned on. And that awful transition to summer that I hate. Why doesn't Tails just give their house an air conditioner? Amy's fan screws up. Tails should have made a fan that wouldn't screw up. And Sonic turns on the fan, but it blows them all away and somehow makes them spin around. Tails predicted this, as he reminds us, as I wonder why the house didn't have an independent air conditioning system the whole time that could work whenever they want. How useless is Tails? I liked the part where Six saved Amy with a bike. I love that they all want to spin around again. It's sweet to see how fun-loving they are in the show. The show's greatest strength is that we see the heroes in their downtime palling around for once. Too bad it's so unfunny. Orbot and Cubot fan Eggman, who somehow doesn't have great air conditioning. And they give him the idea for them to install solar panels to power his air conditioning. The solar panels generate more power than he needs, and he wonders what to do with all the extra power. He decides to supercharge his robots and send them on a mission of destruction. So all the robots who aren't connected to the wall turn on, and immediately start going away without us seeing the wires on them pull off from a wall socket. How'd the electricity get into them? Wireless transmission? The hero's ice cream immediately melts, and Knuckles throws Sonic upwards so we can spin dash away some robots. Tails says these robots are supercharged after a convenient detector tells him so. Oh, but he didn't fill the good air conditioner. One of the members of the homeowner associations sees that a robot of Eggman's has a sign saying that it belongs to Eggman. And somehow, the mother of a baby sitting next to him is actually surprised that those robots belong to Eggman. What? The story sucks. What were these writers on? And after they send him a threatening letter to get rid of his robots, which took until now to happen, somehow expecting him to comply and not kill them, Eggman makes a plan to stupidly invite the idiots over for a lovely dinner and prove there are no robots here. After Orbot lampshades that he should just threaten them instead. If even the writer had this idea, how did he not understand immediately that this would be a stupid plot because Eggman would never do this? That he would never be in this situation? If he's constantly menacing Sonic with his robot army, he'd just do the same thing to these guys. And then we get a chance to see him at his most threatening, sending them to the hospital from injuries from his robots. That would remind us that he's not supposed to be a sympathetic guy that the audience roots for. Which We can't really help with civilians this begging to be threatened. We see Orbot and Huat constantly push each other in the elevator and set down a potted plant as entertaining music plays. I don't know what them and Eggman are trying to accomplish. Then it turns out that Knuckles and his friends were stranded in the desert all of a sudden. So long that Knuckles started having hallucinations. They hear a convenient radio report that a rainstorm's coming to get them out of the drought. Then lightning hits something in Eggman's face, and he arbitrarily says he's sure that was nothing because this writer has no respect for him. He welcomes the Homeowners Association, which includes the mother with the baby, and he keeps one of his robots from attacking them and grabs their arms too tightly. Then he gives them a whole tray of shrimps. Somehow it's just come to their attention that he keeps robots on the premises. Now! This is so confusing. Why would this group willingly visit Eggman? How did they not know him already? He tackles them suspiciously and presses a wrist gadget to turn up loud classical music on his new sound system. He has to move around the mother to keep them from freaking out at his robots and has to smash a bunch of them in a corridor. Then the robots somehow fail to go after the heroes, when that should be what they're programmed to do. So, did a lightning strike inexplicably reprogram the robot to not obey him anymore? I don't get it. So after the group gets trapped in something by Eggman, Sonic frees them immediately and they threaten to evict him from his own house, even though it's his house. I mean, it looks like a house that he would have made himself. Where do they have the guts to tell him what to do? When Eggman says his robots are his art, he gets given an exception. For some reason, it's only an exception if the robots aren't on a lawn, and he was already doing that for some reason. Why are the robots attacking his own base? It makes sense if Tails reprogrammed them to do that with his Hypnobot, but no! Fuck continuity. The first time I watched this episode, I was a little off-put and confused because I hadn't watched the first part of this episode before they started hiding the robots. And I would have seen it if someone had bothered to upload it to YouTube. I had to watch the full thing on Daily Motion. But even without as much context behind it, well, even the context doesn't make it make sense. I'm sure that the Homeowners Association visiting Eggman's base and not knowing who he is would be just as stupid if I knew the context behind it. And it turns out it was stupid. How would the robots belonging to Eggman not be universally known by everyone on the planet? Wouldn't it be all over the news every day? Why would this group of people think they could threaten him with eviction and actually succeed? If that could happen, why didn't the mayor do it? Eggman's constantly sending out robots after people, and he's always right behind them, and he's openly bragging about them every chance he gets. Who else would they belong to? I could kind of buy it if these guys were from the other side of the world, but they live in Sonic's village. This whole episode felt forced because of how stupidly ignorant these people were and how meek and ineffectual Eggman was to not just menace them like Orbot said, which would have been a villain moment for him. Why are the writers afraid of giving him those when his whole character is about vice? And AOSCH wasn't too afraid of making him have tons of villain moments. And the fact that the heroes were too hot during a heat wave was also forced because Tails should have already had a house with perfect air conditioning for any time of the year. Or else what is his inventing good for? That would be one of the first things he'd engineer because that's fundamental to a house. I don't care how fast that heat wave came, he would have had an air conditioner already. And maybe it all happened too fast for me to notice, but how the hell did the heroes think going to a desert during a heat wave was a good idea? How did they get there? They're just at the burger place. It's interesting to see Eggman desperately try to hide his robots, and that's probably why they made the story. But I don't know how lightning strike against some vague place could turn the robots against him instead of simply destroying them all, and whatever hit. It's convoluted. So is the idea that Eggman wouldn't just threaten these people with a fist of a giant robot. He wouldn't be trying to impress and trick them. He'd kill them if they tried to cross him. And the fact that we got Cheetah of an action scene because the robots wouldn't attack the heroes is just symbolic of the show's skewed priorities. Nothing about this plot made any sense. It was interesting to watch, but still, that's Penders' style of writing, where it's an interesting, entertaining story with refreshing ideas that's built on no foundation of logic. So he spent the whole time with a cocked eyebrow from confusion. Or at least that's how I look right now, typing this summary.